Hi, Aseem. Uh, Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in into our Scale to Zero show. Today we have Aseem Rastogi with us. Aseem is the head of cybersecurity and compliance at Misho. Prior to joining Misho, he was leading the cybersecurity and compliance efforts at Razorpay. Aseem, thank you so much for joining with me today.
Thanks, Purushottam, for having me. Pleasure is mine.
Thank you. All right, so let's get started into the questions. So the first question is for a fast-growing fintech company, what steps would you recommend to store and protect sensitive financial data like bank account information or credit card information?
Right. So, yeah, this is a very big challenge for any fast growing fintech company. So, I would say focus on the basics and get them right, right? Isolate, so I'll give very actionable input, right? Isolate
Mm-hmm.
production environment from other environments. Give very limited access
Okay.
to people to that, only on a need to know basis. And there should not be any data copy to the test environment from production, and well tested backup and recovery procedure. That is very, very important to do, which is often overlooked. And rest, all the
Mm-hmm.
configuration and vulnerability management is all checklist driven and best practices driven. That's all is fine. So I guess they can follow on that. But these basics are really, really important to keep in mind.
Okay. Makes sense. The next question is how should we ensure that our systems are ready to handle large scale attacks?
Right. In order to be ready, right, we don't know attacker schedule, right? The only way to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that our systems are ready is to become an attacker ourselves. In other words, simulation.
Okay.
So we need to simulate all types of attack on our own infrastructure, maybe DOS, DDoS, ransomware attacks like backup restoration from scratch, installation of our entire software stack using automation in a new, brand new, let's say, cloud environment or so, right? Whatever is applicable.
Mm-hmm.
So that we need to become attacker and then ensure the resiliency on part of handling.
Okay. Makes sense. So there have been many data breaches in the last couple of years, right? So in the event of uh, a data breach, what should the response plan should look like?
Yeah, this is very context driven. So, for example, depending on the risk and the stakeholders involved, the response plan has to be devised ahead of time. For example, if it's a consumer based company, then the plan has to be prepared to reach out to end consumers and notify them, secure their data, maybe credit monitoring if there is a financial data leak involved, and so on and so forth, right? If it is a B2B company, then
Mm-hmm.
it's a different type of stakeholders which needs to be notified, and the response plan differs. And if business is a regulated one like a fintech or so, then in that case the
Mm-hmm.
response plan should include the stakeholder management, government licensing, legal things as well. So it really depends. There's no one size fits all or cookie cutter type of thing, but the only thing to keep in
Mm-hmm.
mind is be ready ahead of time.
Makes sense. So a lot of planning upfront.
Yeah, a lot of planning, simulation, and having a role play ahead of time, so everybody in the response team knows what they are supposed to do. Otherwise, when the crisis hits, it will become chaos. So we need to have that simulation. It should be a muscle memory, pretty much. That we don't need
Makes sense.
to like figure out what to do next.
Okay. So the next question is what areas should be considered while planning a budget in case of any possible attack?
Yeah, again, this goes back to the risk assessment of a particular business, which is trying
Mm-hmm.
to do this budgeting exercise. So, starting from risk assessment as well as threat modeling, uh, we can come around with a list of, say, stakeholders or rather threat actors who will be interested in harming the business, and based on that the solutions and the budgeting needs to be done. So for example, if there is a business where state actors might be involved there, that requires a much higher response planning and budgeting than a consumer business where state threat actors may not be interested in. So that depends on what kind of actors are going to be involved there and what their interests are going to be looking like.
Okay. Uh, the last question is for a fintech startup, what security roles should be hired first and why?
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to setting up any function, not just security, it has to be to hire the leader first, and let them choose their team.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it a bit easier for everybody, because if the team members are hired ahead of time, there may be other cross currents which new leader may not be aware of, or may not be able to kind of spend their energy into managing those cross currents than setting up from scratch. And so that's one reason, of
Right.
course. And there is other reasons that the type of people who will be there, everybody has a leadership style, right? And everybody has a
Mm-hmm.
certain experience and ways of say cyber security or any other items, right? So any function, right, for that matter. In that model, all the team members and all the hierarchy, etc., need to fit in. So it's best to have the leader first, and then rest
Mm-hmm.
of the things should follow.
Okay, makes sense. Now let's move on to the rapid fire section. What's the biggest lie you have heard in cybersecurity?
Well, that's a good one. So the biggest lie I've heard is you buy my product and you will be secure.
Or what is one of the myths about cybersecurity?
Uh, Give me a criteria on which you can measure it, and you can show me like exact security posture of the company. That can be done. That's the myth. It's very subjective at times. There are certain dimensions which can't
Mm-hmm.
be measured, and so on.
Okay. What advice would you give your 25-year-old self starting in security and why?
Yeah, so I would say to myself, if I was 25-year-old, be a developer first, right?
Okay.
I mean, having security career is good, but at least couple of years should be spent being a developer and seeing the struggles and challenges of the developer. Um, that's very important, because security is a business of empathy, right? Because we are in security,
Mm-hmm.
we are interrupting a lot of people in their day-to-day job. So if we don't have that empathy, it will be very difficult. And empathy cannot be told or taught; it has to be felt.
Correct.
So that's why
Yes.
it should be a couple of years of development work is very essential.
Okay. Assuming you are hiring in one sentence, what stands out in a candidate's resume for you?
Yeah, I mean, so candidate at different levels, right? So I would say for a leadership role, it really demonstrates the maturity of the deliverables, right? Delivering up, say, a pen testing is one thing, right? But having a process which can be optimized and run and disintermediated by themselves, right? So a leader should be able to disintermediate themselves from the task, and that's what, if when I see in resume, I get very impressed, because that demonstrates that the person is ready for next level of challenges. He is not stuck with what he has built, right? He's not fallen in love, and it providing the growth path for the next run.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you so much, Aseem. It was very insightful to speak with you. Looking forward to learning more from you in future.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Purushottam, for having me. It was a pleasure.